Welcome to Somber, the place where the darkest secrets come to light. Today we follow a chilling tale, the story of today. A vanished child, a village shrouded in mystery, and a father whose tricks blur the line between deceit and heroism. Prepare yourself for suspense, tension, and moments that will make you hold your breath. Sit back, stay alert, and enter the story of today. My old man is a total fraud. From north to south, he'd pull off the big cons, while I'd scrape up the petty change. Everything was cruising along just fine on those beat-up, rickety buses, right up until the day the stench of death hit both of us right in the face. A murder case. The cops had turned the town upside down for over a dozen days, but couldn't find a single trace of a body. My old man, feeling full of himself, set up an altar to work his magic. 3 sticks of incense burned out. His wooden staff gave a hard thwack against the dirt. A plowshare was heaved up, revealing muddy soil oozing with murky blood. The corpse was lying exactly right there. At that moment, I shivered and backed up a few steps. It seemed like my raggedy old man actually had some real skills. But that night, taking a deep drag from a cheap cigarette that glowed fiery red in the dark, he blew the acrid smoke right into my face. Niem Thu, this case is rotten to the core. The kid who vanished was Niem Thu. He went to the same town school as me, went to school in the morning, evaporated by the afternoon. Not a single trace left behind. The sniffer dogs barked themselves hoarse, totally useless. The cops only found 2 things on the bridge: a blue robot cat backpack smeared with mud, and a mangled bicycle tossed on the side of the road. On the bike frame, streaks of blood had dried into a pitch-black crust. Alive, no sign of the person. Dead, no sign of the body. Whodunit, the kid's dad, went insane. He made a living handling funerals, touching coffins year-round. Pretty much a big shot in these parts. But as smoothly as he handled other people's funerals, when it came to his own kid, he was completely helpless. Out here in the countryside, kids going missing happens every now and then. But Whodunit flipped all the neighboring villages inside out, looking for him. When the ways of the living hit a dead end, folks urged him to try the ways of the dead. Desperate people usually cling to gods and spirits. Whodunit's bloodshot, despairing eyes eventually locked onto my dad's fake title, Master Shaman. But how the hell would my dad have the skills to find a missing person? Walking home from school that noon, I kicked a pebble down the road, dragging my feet with my backpack in sheer frustration. I had just beaten up a few kids in my class to claim the title of top dog. My butt hadn't even warmed the throne yet, and my new lackeys hadn't even had the chance to serve me. Taking on this case meant that, one way or another, the 2 of us would be packing up our junk tonight and running for our lives in the dead of night. Thinking about having to sleep rough again, starving and miserable, I felt so resentful I wanted to burst into tears. Yet, right as I reached the door, my old man actually nodded and took the gig. He had lost his damn mind. I saw right through him. His feng shui knowledge was cobbled together from a few torn books bought on the street, and some of Lam Ching Ying's old vampire-busting movies. His main prop was a rusty compass picked up at a flea market. He was a third-rate knockoff, but he made up for it with his looks. Salt and pepper hair, thick eyebrows. When he was scamming someone, his face was as cold as cash, looking every bit the part of a transcendent, enlightened master. The real moneymaker, though, was his blind left eye. Pure white, no pupil. He covered it up by calling it his yin-yang eye. Clients would walk in, catch one glimpse of that eye, cower in fear, and believe every word he said. He'd often prop his feet up on a chair and tell me, "Anyone who comes knocking here, they already believe it in their heads. I just sprinkle a little extra salt and pepper on it." As for the women, 9 out of 10 are asking about their husbands cheating or how to give birth to a son. It's incredibly easy to milk them for cash, kiddo. As for me, I played the role of the obedient little disciple. Round face, blinking my eyes innocently, serving tea and pouring water. In reality, I was keeping my ears perked up, gathering info to report back to him. When I was 9, The school threatened to expel me, so he had to end our days of drifting. We washed up in this town, renting a shabby storefront. He'd throw on a purple silk robe and fan himself with a folding paper fan. The shop was tiny, but he went out of his way to build a wooden partition to split it in half. He only saw exactly 5 people a day and made them call ahead for an appointment. Whether it was the village chief or some tattooed gangster, they all had to sit out on the porch gathering dust for at least half an hour before he'd let them in. I sat squatting in the corner, biting into a slice of watermelon, with the juice running down my chin, glaring at him. He pressed his thumb and index finger together, tapping hard on the wooden table. Lam Niem Thu, wipe your mouth and listen to my teaching. People are pathetic. The longer you make them wait, the more they think you're a god. In the underworld, they call that style. The game is like that, he said. The more you ignore them, the more they bow down. You act too eager, they despise you. Behind the partition, with agarwood incense billowing, he'd close his eyes and play the mystic. Outside the partition, I'd pour tea and serve water, ears pricked up for gossip. Father pulled the big cons, son pulled the petty ones. The intelligence agency of Master Zi Xuan ran as smoothly as that. As soon as I poked my head into the house, the smell of scallion fat hit my nose. Auntie Xuan had already set out 3 hot stir-fried dishes, plus a plate of crispy salted roasted peanuts. The old man's blind eye was now covered by a shiny black leather patch. His remaining good eye was half closed, letting out a satisfied sigh after a sip of cheap rice wine. Auntie Xuan was the neighborhood loudspeaker. She could dig up anything. How many moles someone had on their body, how many guys they'd slept with, how many times they broke the bed in a month. Thanks to her big mouth, his reputation as a master was renowned everywhere. But only she and I knew that behind that beautiful facade was a total scumbag. I tossed my backpack, threw a leg over the chair, and tore off a piece of pig's head meat. So fancy. Is this our last supper before we make a run for it? Auntie Xuan gave me a playful glare, scooping a heaping bowl of rice and shoving it into my hands. Run for what? Tomorrow is Friday. Your dad already got you out of school. We're going up to the Duong family's place to set up an altar. I choked on my rice. Set up an altar? We aren't running? Auntie Xuan squinted her eyes and held up 5 chubby, jiggly fingers. 500? My jaw dropped. She laughed, her whole body shaking. My heart skipped a beat. 5,000? Oh, my little ancestor. 50,000 yuan. 50 grand. I choked for real this time. Normally, the old man made 50 or 100 off his bullshit fortune telling. Now he's pulling a stunt this huge. That family is in a tragic state. Auntie Xuan clicked her tongue. If they don't find the boy, Mr. Nyi is as good as half dead. The old man didn't utter a sound, just picked up a peanut, popped it in his mouth and chewed crunchily. Auntie Xuan gazed at him affectionately. Every evening she'd eagerly come over to cook and do laundry. He just shamelessly enjoyed it, neither saying yes nor pushing her away. The ultimate fuckboy. How the hell was he planning to find the kid? The cops had scoured the earth for 10 days and still gave up. Kai was the only kid in Duongjia village who trekked 2 hours on a bike all the way to the town to study. Even though his village had a proper school, no idea what his dad was thinking. Later I learned Duongyi had once said, half drunk and half terrified, that he would rather let his son wear out 2 bicycle tires a month than sleep one night behind the gates of that school. Back then, everyone laughed at him for being cursed and crazy. If Kai had studied close to home, who's to say he would have gone missing sooner? Thinking of Kai, my chest felt a sharp pang. His eyes were big and round, and he had 2 dimples when he smiled. Rich family, plenty of pocket money. Every afternoon after school, he'd buy 2 popsicles, hurriedly shove one into my hand, face blushing red as he stuttered, I can't finish it." A sweet kid like that, it was 80 or 90% likely he'd been snatched up by human traffickers. The old man finally stopped chewing. He looked up at me. That look made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. His good eye lacked its usual mocking glint. It was thick with a mix of pity and sheer terror. He set his wineglass down with a clack and forced a twisted smile. If it really was a kidnapping, then his family is actually pretty damn lucky. At the crack of dawn the next day, he dragged me up by the neck, shoved me into his busted-up Wuling Hongguang minivan, and slammed the gas straight for Duangjia village. The road was so bumpy, it felt like my internal organs were going to shatter. I clutched my stomach and puked my guts out the car door. Swerving to avoid a pothole, he mumbled the rest of the intel Auntie Xuan had picked up. Who knows what kind of cursed karma the Duong family was bearing? A year ago, Duongni's wife dropped dead from a sudden illness. His future son-in-law vanished without a trace. The most horrifying was Duong Tua Diep, the eldest daughter, who had just graduated college and returned to the village to teach. That night she was dragged into the cornfield and murdered in a way no one in the village dared to describe out loud. By the time she was found, every path to justice had already been buried with her. Duongni only had one rotting post left to cling to, Little Kai. And now, that post had been uprooted too. The villagers whispered that, because he was a mortician, constantly handling coffins, the aura of the dead had worn down his boot heels and brought a curse to wipe out his whole bloodline. Dead, all of them. My old man took a drag of his cigarette, bit his lip, and said there was a demon at work. But whether it was a black-haired human demon or a headless ghost, he didn't know yet. Looking at Duongni's tragic, soulless state, I'd bet money he'd hang himself from the rafters if he didn't find his son. Yet, here he was, kowtowing and smashing his head against the ground before a quack dot. Just as the sky was turning light, my dad and I kicked the door open and stepped into the Duong house. A biting chill shot straight down my spine. The whole house was cluttered with paper effigies, paper boy and girl servants caked in stark white powder, cheeks dotted with crimson-red moles, grinning widely as they stared dead at the guests. I broke out in goosebumps. My dad shuddered once, stood in the middle of the courtyard, and muttered while counting on his knuckles. Then he cleared his throat, patted his chest, and guaranteed Duongni 3 days, set up an altar, summon the soul, fix the feng shui. Alive, they'd see the person. Dead, they'd see the corpse. Hearing this, Duongni let out a sobbing gasp. His knees went weak and he collapsed onto the brick floor, thudding his head down over and over. The grand performance began. My dad demanded Tuohai's clothes, pillow and hair, fresh chicken blood, coarse white salt, an incense burner smoking heavily. He threw on a tattered Taoist robe, wore his hat crooked, and ripped off his eye patch, letting it fall to the dirt. His black eye glared fiercely, while his milky white eye looked terrifyingly demonic. He danced around with a peachwood sword, slicing through the air with a whoosh, taking mouthfuls of wine and spewing it out, muttering incantations for a whole damn day. The villagers swarmed around, jaws dropped in horror. I stood in the corner of the yard, pouting my lips. I knew his playbook all too well. Pay him 500, he dances for a night. Getting paid 50 grand? Today's foaming at the mouth act was just a little appetizer to scratch the itch. After dinner, the countryside sank into dead silence. The air was thick and suffocating. A sharp crescent moon hung dangling right overhead. Midnight. The sharp barking of dogs echoed off the mountain walls in bursts. The frogs croaked incessantly, enough to rot your guts. My dad suddenly shot up. The fake thug face vanished, replaced by a bone-chilling coldness. He grabbed his tool bag and jerked his chin, signaling me to stick close. The real working hours of the bogus shaman had officially begun. The wind howled in gusts across the bridge railing, the spot where Kai's blood-soaked bike had been dumped. Auntie Xuan was already there, neck hunched against the cold, waiting in the fog. My dad flipped on his flashlight and got down flat on the ground. The pale white beam swept slowly over every clump of mud, every crack, every patch of wild grass. Almost an hour went by. I was yawning till tears ran down my face, eyes drooping, exhausted. Suddenly, my dad froze. He dropped entirely to both knees in the mud, pinched a wad of pitch-black dirt, shoved it straight into his mouth, and chewed it mechanically. The gritty sound of it crunching against his teeth made me nauseous. My sleepiness evaporated completely. When he looked up, under the pale moonlight, my dad's eyes were streaked with blood-red veins. A fierce, ruthless, murderous aura radiated off him. A chill ran down my spine. "Old lamb, what's the verdict?" Auntie Xuan hurried over, bracing herself to ask. My dad didn't answer. He spat the mouthful of mud onto the ground. "Xuan, what did you dig up?" Auntie Xuan rubbed her freezing hands together, angrily hissing through her teeth. "This village is freaking weird. A while back, a cousin of mine married into this place. Back then it was dirt poor, but the people were warm and honest. Now, look at that school over there. 3 stories huge, puts the town school to shame. Free room and board, and any kid who studies well even gets extra cash slipped to them. People from other villages are racing to kick their kids over here. The village has gotten filthy rich, but the people's hearts, it's like they're possessed." She gulped, glancing left and right into the night. I tried to casual up and ask around, but the second they see a stranger, they all scatter. Every single one of them glares at you, like they've seen a ghost. I sneaked all the way to my cousin's house, and it took pulling teeth to get her to spit out a few details about the deaths in Mr. Nie's family. I pressed at her with one more question, and she clammed right up, fighting tooth and nail to chase me out. She hesitated, then lowered her voice even further, but I did hear 2 things. First, after Teacher Triu vanished, the south corner of the schoolyard was sealed off for 3 nights. They said they were fixing drainage, but no one saw a work crew in daylight. Second, the kids from other villages never go home during term. Free food, free beds, cash rewards. Too generous, right? Their parents think it's heaven. The village people look at it like a locked granary. Nobody asks what is being stored inside. My dad's fingers tightened around the flashlight. He bent down again, scraped a thin layer of yellow clay from the side of the bridge, and rubbed it against the black mud he had just tasted. The 2 colors did not match at all. One came from the riverbank. The other was dry, powdery, and strangely clean, like earth dug from a place that never saw running water. "That backpack was thrown here after the fact," he muttered. "The kid didn't vanish on this bridge. Someone wanted the whole town to look here." Looking at Auntie Xuan's swollen, frustrated face, I knew this was the very first time our intelligence agency had completely struck out. Duongjia village had a reputation for being filthy rich, but the houses were shabby, the roads a muddy yellow mess. The villagers hid out in the forest, chopping trees, plowing barren land. Where was the prosperity in that? As darkness fell, the entire village retreated into a pitch-black, sealed snail shell. Not a single window dared to let out even half a ray of light, creepy as hell. There was only one place lit up brightly, the school. The stark white fluorescent lights shone blindingly, as cold and soulless as operating room lights. My dad stared fixedly at that glow. Under the crescent moon, the mocking look of a con artist was completely gone from his eyes. There was only absolute freezing coldness. "Xuan," he spoke up, his voice deep and stern. "Human lives are at stake. Do me a favor, grab the gear, find that blonde brat who keeps hanging around the school, and make one phone call for me. Not to the town station, to the province." Auntie Xuan's face changed. "You already know who did it?" "No," my dad said, "but I know where they don't want us to look." After torturing ourselves all night, before the dew had even melted, he yanked me up by the collar again. "Dad, kids who don't sleep can't fucking grow tall." I thrashed around, grumbling in annoyance. He slammed me onto the ground. "If we don't have money for porridge, we won't even fucking survive, let alone grow tall. Get your ass to work." Looking at his grumpy, money-grubbing face, I clicked my tongue. That profound look in his eyes last night, I must have been sleepwalking to see it. In the middle of the courtyard, besides the massive altar, he had also set up a giant iron cauldron. He changed his Taoist robe, crossed his legs, and leisurely blew on his steaming bowl of green tea, sipping it slowly. Next to him, Duongyi was huddled up in a ball. The coffin maker was as withered as a blood-drained corpse. Ever since he lost his son, he had aged 10 years. Today he looked even more tragic than yesterday, our eyes staring blankly at the ground, his nose only flaring occasionally to let out a stifled exhale. What on earth had my old man stuffed into his head? Today was day 2. The grand performance began. I gulped down the rest of my miserable sweet potato porridge, grabbed the brass gong, and ran like hell down the village road. Banging the gong clang clang, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Evil spirits and heretics, be gone. Master Zi Xuan has descended. Today, borrowing the true fire of Samadhi, we're boiling a live human as an offering to heaven to exorcise the demons. Pass up this village and you won't find another. Come out and see." A script I wrote and directed myself, cribbed from some entry-level martial arts movies. Boiling a live person in a vat of oil? Holy shit. Even the gods couldn't stop the peasants from dragging themselves out to watch this. I yelled myself hoarse. Sure enough, the dull wooden doors began to creak open. The half-asleep crowd poured out onto the street in droves. They stood on their tiptoes, craned their necks, and trampled over each other, clustering at the gate of the Duong house like a school of sardines hungry for bait. I clutched the gong and huddled into a hidden corner, my eyes scanning the crowd. Cold sweat broke out down my spine. This massive Duongjia village, from yesterday until now, absolutely did not have a single trace of a child. Every little brat, boy or girl, had completely vanished. In the middle of the courtyard, my dad threw the tea dregs onto the ground. He stood up abruptly, flicking his Taoist sleeves so they fluttered in the wind, clasped his hands together, and cleared his throat with a sound roaring like thunder. "O people of Duongjia village! The disaster that has fallen upon Duong Yi's house. This humble priest now understands its roots." The whispering crowd suddenly went dead silent. He swept his milky white eye across every face, emphasizing every single word. Last night, this humble priest set up an altar and successfully summoned the soul of the boy, Duong Tu Kai. He told me, 15 days ago, on the exact day he went missing, he was already dead. But his resentment touches the heavens. His soul wanders this village, anchoring the gates of hell, absolutely refusing to be reincarnated. Duong Yi collapsed completely onto the freezing ground. The father's heart had been ripped out by the old man and crushed to a pulp in front of the whole world. The dazed, rotting piece of wood from earlier suddenly jerked, his face crumpling and twisting in agony. From his bony chest, a tragic, wailing howl tore through the thick air, the cry of a wild beast driven into a dead end. The crowd flinched, their gossiping eyes suddenly shrinking back in terror. The old man ruthlessly brought down another hammer. That is not all. The death of his wife, the unjust death of his daughter Duong Tuo Diep, the disappearance of his son-in-law Trio Loi, and even the life of little Kai, all of it was caused by Duong Yi's own hands. The moment the words ended, the crowd was like a pan of boiling oil splashed with water. Duongjia village was a tangled web of relatives. Everyone knew exactly whose bowl was chipped in whose house. A toothless old man hurriedly pushed his way to the front, pointing a finger right in my dad's face and scolding. "Master, you're talking nonsense. Ni's wife died of illness, Diep was murdered, and that teacher Triu thought the village was too poor, so he bolted. This whole village knows it. Kai is his own flesh and blood. He worshipped the ground the boy walked on. Why would he harm his own son? Yeah, right. This guy just came here to scam money." The crowd clamored, piling on. Hiding in the corner of the house, I almost snorted with laughter. My dad didn't flinch. He let out a cold, flat scoff. His milky white eye rolled up, glaring menacingly at the toothless old man, making him shut up instantly and shrink back into the crowd. He pulled out an oil-soaked torch and lit it. The flame flared up, clearly illuminating his sinewy, sharp and cold face. This humble priest did not say he used a knife to stab his wife and children to death. He emphasized every syllable, the sound hissing through his teeth. But in his past life, he accumulated a mountain of evil karma. In this life, he must pay that blood debt, dragging his whole family down to a tragic end. And it doesn't stop there. If this evil karma is not destroyed at the root, he paused, sweeping his eyes over the breath-holding crowd. Anyone in this village with the surname Duong, as long as they are tied by blood, don't even dream of a decent end. Whoosh! The furiously burning torch was hurled straight into the pile of firewood stacked beneath the giant cauldron. The fire quickly caught the kerosene, erupting fiercely, blasting a stinging wave of heat into the faces of those standing nearby. The moment they heard about the evil aura spreading and threatening their own lives, the crowd instantly went dead silent and backed up a few steps. To hell with other people's business. When the house burns, the rats show their faces. Better save your own skin first. Amidst the crowd, mostly made up of frail, broken-down old folks, a brat with bleach blonde hair and a pierced ear shoved his way violently to the absolute front. He was about 16 or 17, chewing gum loudly. The moment my dad mentioned Miss Thu Diep, his jaw stopped moving for half a breath. Then he smirked again, louder and uglier than before, as if that tiny crack had never appeared. At that moment, I suddenly saw Duong Nhi slightly raise his eyes. The exact second his gaze met the blonde kid's, a sharp flash pierced through his dull, dead fish eyes. It was so fast I thought I was seeing things. In the blink of an eye, that lifeless stare dropped back to the dirt floor. No need to fear. My dad's voice boomed over the crackling of the firewood. Duong Nhi's love for his son reaches the heavens and the earth. This humble priest has summoned the true fire of Samadhi. Today we boil Duong Nhi alive in this cauldron. We'll boil him until the evil aura dissipates. You people will be safe. As for Kai's soul, once the evil aura is gone, it will immediately manifest and personally point out the spot where he died. Let the people of Duong Jia bear witness. The crowd gasped in horror. He'll be cooked alive. Holy shit, someone's actually gonna die. My dad bit off a piece of a yellow talisman, chewed it up with a mouthful of murky water, and spat it, in a messy spray right onto Duong Nhi's face. If you want to see your son get in the cauldron, don't worry. This priest's true fire of Samadhi only burns demons. It does not burn mortal flesh. Duong Nhi didn't blink. He dragged his stiff legs, climbed onto the stool, and dropped his body with a thud into the boiling water. Huge bubbles burst open. Thick white steam billowed up. A few women shrieked, covering their eyes with their hands, but leaving gaps between their fingers to stare wide-eyed. Duong Nhi's skin instantly flushed red under the steam, but he ignored it. He sat cross-legged on the hidden stool at the bottom of the cauldron, half his body surrounded by bubbling liquid, eyelids drooping, as motionless as a soulless corpse. No groans, no struggling. Only I knew the liquid was not truly boiling the way it looked. Vinegar, soap ash, and a little kitchen trick could make a vat foam like a demon's mouth, long before it became hot enough to kill a man. Every few minutes, I sneaked cold water in through a bamboo ladle while the flames and steam hid my hands. The crowd fell dead silent. My dad squeezed his eyes shut, muttering incantations, his hands forming seals, his feet stomping heavily as he circled the fire. I huddled in the corner of the yard, one hand tossing more firewood to keep the blaze going, the other sneaking scoops of cold water into the cauldron. The charade dragged on until the sun dropped behind the mountain peaks. At first, the villagers were terrified and shrank back, but by noon they had gotten used to it, cheering like it was a festival. Boiling a live man without his flesh melting or his skin rotting off. In the eyes of these people, my dad was a literal god descended to earth. The gate of the Duong house was more crowded and lively than New Year's. A few cocky young punks lounged on the branches of the almond tree, loudly cracking melon seeds. One middle-aged woman even brought a whole bowl of dry noodles, slurping away right at the threshold, chewing while staring wide-eyed at the show. Night fell. The audience scattered. The performance ended. The glorious god dragged his exhausted body into the house, lunged at a roasted chicken, and tore it apart. He chewed ravenously, gulping down cartilage and bone like a starving demon locked in the underworld for a century, and finally set free. I swallowed hard, tugging at the hem of his shirt. "Dad, Let's take advantage of the dark and bolt. If we don't dig up Kai tomorrow, these villagers are going to stitch our mouths shut. Even the cops drew a blank. Where the hell are we supposed to find his corpse? He choked on a piece of chicken, coughing violently. His blind eye glowed in the dark as his scrawny neck craned right into my face. Baring teeth full of stuck meat, he hissed through his teeth. No corpse? I'll smash your head in, bury you in the mud, and we'll have a corpse right away. Same body size, wearing the same clothes. Once the flesh is rotting to mush, who's gonna know if it's Kai or you? His acrid breath blew straight into my face. My spine turned ice cold. The blood in my veins froze solid. Was he telling the truth or joking? I didn't dare cry, just hurriedly shrank back against the wall, biting my lip so hard it bled. That night, with his stinking foot propped right next to my nose, I curled up tight, clutching my chest, not daring to breathe too hard. I was terrified that if I closed my eyes, he would grab me by the hair, drag me to the corner of the garden, and take a hoe to my skull. But in the middle of the night, he left, silently slipped out the door, didn't call for me. For the first time since I started following him on his cons, he broke the rule and went out alone. Through the crack of the door, I saw Auntie Xuan waiting under the eaves with a torn school ledger pressed under her coat. Beside her stood the blonde brat, no gum in his mouth now, his face as white as paper. My dad said only one sentence before the wind swallowed the rest. If you want justice, tomorrow you dig with your own hands. Dawn. I was hunched over, carrying a bucket of white vinegar mixed with soap ash and sour wine to pour into the iron cauldron. It was an old trick. The mixture foamed and spat at a low temperature, fooling the eyes of anyone standing outside the steam. It looked terrifying, but with enough cold water slipped in at the right time, you could keep a man's skin intact and still scare half a village into kneeling. Clack. Footsteps. I snapped my head up. He was back, carrying a dull pickaxe on his shoulder. His pant legs and the soles of his shoes were caked with the damp, pitch-black mud of a freshly dug grave. My heart leaped into my throat. Today was day 3. The crowd outside the gate was growing massive. A few unfamiliar, sharply dressed faces started showing up. This cheap magic trick was about to cross the line. This village wasn't full of illiterate hicks like the backwoods we'd been in before. Anyone with half a brain cell or a taste for meddling would sniff out the sour reek of that vinegar. The game was about to blow up in our faces. Before the morning mist had even lifted, the broken brick courtyard of the Duong house was already suffocatingly tense. I didn't even need to bang the gong to clear the way. The nosy crowd had swarmed in like flies to blood. Cell phones were pointed straight at the center of the yard like gun barrels, especially that blonde brat from yesterday. Chewing loudly on a toothpick, he held his phone high, grinning like he'd struck gold. Hey bros, here's that scammer Shaman from yesterday. Let's get this to the top. Today, I'm showing you a live broadcast of boiling a man alive. Smash that like button. Live streaming, motherfucker. He was live streaming. A freezing chill shot down my back. I shot a glance at my old man, my stomach churning. But he remained as stoic as a rock. 0 hour had arrived. Duong Yi had already stripped off his clothes, standing there in nothing but thin boxers, looking as withered as a dried corpse, waiting to be tossed into a frying pan. I slinked into the kitchen, trembling as I grabbed the bucket of pre-mixed ghost vinegar. My hand slipped on the handle from cold sweat. Suddenly, a rough hand clamped down heavily on my shoulder. The old man. He snatched the bucket of vinegar water and dumped the whole thing straight into the backyard. Then he grabbed a bucket of crystal clear, freezing cold well water. Well water, real water. My mind exploded. He was greedy for money. 50 grand was a fortune, but this was murder. My knees gave out and I collapsed onto the mud-stained kitchen floor, desperately clinging to his messy pant legs. Dad. Dad, my voice hitched, breaking apart. The primal panic of like a little kid shattered all my usual cunning disguises. Let it go, Dad. Let's run. I can starve, I won't go to school anymore. Don't do something crazy. What if you boil him to death? The old man looked down. He used a calloused finger to wipe away the snot and drool streaming down my face, letting out a dark, scoffing laugh full of disgust. "Run my ass. Shut up. Don't ask questions. I know exactly what I'm doing. Nobody is getting boiled today." Ignoring my look of absolute terror, he carried the bucket of well water straight out to the courtyard. Only then did I notice the cauldron had already been packed with dry yellow clay before dawn. Today, the fire was not for a person. It was for the dirt. Usually, when running a scam, he'd give me a million instructions, covering every angle. This time, he didn't spit out half a word. My inside felt completely hollow, floating. I wiped my tears on my sleeve, staggered to my feet, and grabbed the brass gong, tapping it weakly. My voice was trembling, choked up, completely stripped of the fierce, fire-breathing swagger I had yesterday. The crowd started buzzing. The blonde kid yelled out again, leaning his chin over the fence. "Still boiling him today, old man? There's nearly 1,000 people in the livestream waiting for this." Thwack! The blazing torch was hurled straight into the dry firewood by the old man. The flames roared up, but I froze. The massive iron cauldron had already been tightly sealed with a heavy lid by him. God knows when. Seeing the fire catch, Whodunit closed his dull eyes, shuddered, and stepped forward, getting ready to climb the stool and wade into the vat. My heart shot straight to the top of my head. "Hold!" the old man roared, sweeping his sleeve to stop him. "No more boiling today." The crowd erupted in outrage. One guy barked, "If there's no boiling, what the fuck are we watching?" The old man let out a sinister chuckle, his smile looking downright demonic in the flickering torchlight. "Last night, this humble priest simmered Whodunit for 9 straight hours. The evil, murderous aura in this village has been entirely drained into the cauldron. Today, the earth god has shown mercy and granted this priest gold dust to lead the way. Follow the gold dust, and we shall definitely find the lost soul. Everyone, wash your eyes and watch closely." The villagers deflated like soggy rice paper. No live human boiling, nothing sensational left. But when the old man swung his arm and hurled the heavy iron lid away, curiosity gripped them once again. The whole crowd surged forward. I stood on my tiptoes, curiously craning my neck to peer inside. Gold dust, my ass. The bottom of the vat was bone dry, piled high with nothing but yellow dirt, roasted hot and giving off a burnt smell. Crumbled dirt, crushed as fine as sand. A flash of lightning struck through my brain. The mud on his pant legs this morning, the caked-on soles of his shoes, the dull pickaxe. My heart hammered wildly in my chest. This crazy old man, where the hell did he sneak off to in the middle of the night to dig up this pile of dirt? What disgusting hidden secret was buried here that he was desperate enough to hide, even from me? Whodunit hurriedly shoved his legs into his pants, fumbling, his face still in shock. But that blonde brat, Hoang Mao, jumped right up. He was live streaming, and a live stream needed blood. It needed absolute insanity. Not some starts with a bang, ends with a whimper anticlimax. I sneakily pulled out my phone, my heart pounding as I logged into his live room. The comments were scrolling like a waterfall. "Scam. Report him, guys. Let's bounce and go to work, total waste of time." The brat frantically screamed into his phone, "Don't leave. There's still a good show. Definitely a good show coming." His beady eyes were glued to my dad, bloodthirsty and full of anticipation. My old man seemed to read the crowd's mind. He swung a ladle, continuously splashing water onto the blazing hot vat. Sizzle. Thick steam billowed up, catching the red glow of the fire to form a glittering mist that looked like phosphorus. My dad stood right in the middle of that fiery fog, his milky white eye reflecting the flames, looking exactly like a judge straight out of the underworld. The live room exploded. "Holy shit, look! In the sparks, there's a shadow of a kid. I see it too. He's running, and another shadow is chasing him. Sigi? But where the hell would that old guy get a projector?" In the courtyard, the villagers froze like statues. Whodunit slowly stood up straight, his dry, dead wood eyes suddenly sparking with a dying ember of life. And then, the real horror began. The layer of yellow dirt in the vat under the extreme heat, started bubbling like magma. The old man brought a hammer crashing down against the side of the cauldron. Clang! The sharp sound pierced right through eardrums. Sparks showered around him like a blazing red bamboo curtain. In that bubbling pool of yellow mud, I swear to God I heard the howling of a chained wild beast. From the burning, muddy earth, something slowly emerged. Bony, bone dry, a human hand made of baked clay. It didn't just sit there. It spun with a grating creak on the surface of the vat, then suddenly snapped its index finger straight out, pointing dead in one single direction. The terrified crowd parted, like they'd been sliced open by an invisible blade. At the end of that tunnel of human bodies, the magnificent three-story school stood towering, its stark white fluorescent lights glaring blindingly amidst the dark, deep mountain forest. The viewer count skyrocketed past 1,000. Hoang Mao stood dead in his tracks. The phone in his hand was shaking violently, the camera lens swaying wildly. He wasn't screaming anymore. His face was as pale as a man who had just witnessed his own death. My dad's voice rang out, loud and bizarrely majestic. The burial site is right in the school to the south. Follow me. My spine was drenched in cold sweat. If he actually found a corpse, how the hell was he going to explain it to the cops? Did he just know the spot? Or did he have a hand in it himself? A chill crawled across my skin. The massive crowd surged aggressively toward the school gates. But the security guards were already stationed there, the heavy iron gates locked tight. This is a place of learning, not a place for shamans to dance around. Get the hell out, the guard roared. The compass in my dad's hand suddenly started spinning wildly, the metal parts clashing together, letting out an ear-piercing, painful buzz. The old man glared. The corpse is in there. The gold dust leads the way. The ancestors are my witness. The child lies freezing beneath this dirt. The villagers were now driven utterly insane by curiosity and blind faith. They screamed, shoving against the iron gates. Right at that moment, Principal Duong stepped out. He was also a Duong, a local from the village, but he wore a button-down shirt and tie, projecting an aura of powerful intellect. Duong Nhi, don't be so foolish. Principal Duong pointed right at my dad's face. This is a place for cultivating minds. Why are you letting this scammer smear it? Your daughter has passed away. She was a teacher. How humiliated would she be to see her father pulling this stunt? My dad didn't back down a single step. This priest swears to the heavens. If there is no corpse in this school, let lightning strike me dead right on the spot. Duong Nhi collapsed to his knees, his head hitting the ground with heavy thuds. Principal Duong, let me in. My daughter died a tragic death. My son-in-law went missing. Now my son. If I don't find him, I won't survive. Principal Duong's face darkened, his eyes narrowing into a dangerous slit. Little Kai isn't a student at this school. He went missing out on the road. Why would he wander in here? Are you trying to say someone from my school kidnapped him? The principal's words were ironclad, but Duong Nhi was now a wounded beast. His usual lowly weakness was wiped clean away, replaced by a spine-chilling hysteria. He shot to his feet, his hunched back suddenly, straight as a tree struck by lightning. He lunged at the iron gate, his bony hands gripping the freezing metal bars tight, shaking them with all his might. The deafening clang and clatter of colliding metal echoed through the normally tranquil academic grounds. Dear God, open your eyes and look, Duong Nhi roared, his voice hoarse like tearing fabric. My son is a gentle boy. How could you cut off his path to live? Open the gate! Open the gate! His howling made the students in the classrooms start poking their heads out, eyes wide with fear. On the phone, the blonde brat Hoang Mao's livestream room exploded with comments. People saw the guards about to call the cops, but Principal Duong waved his hand to stop them. A highly suspicious silence settled over the school board. The iron gate shook more and more violently. My eyes bulged out when I saw Hoang Mao toss his phone aside and lunge forward to grab the iron gate right beside Duong Nhi. He climbed up it like a monkey, using his entire body weight to add to the frantic father's crazed momentum. Then one person 2 people, the villagers began to swarm in. Crash! The massive iron gate collapsed, kicking up a blinding cloud of dust. The crowd, like a burst dam, swept aside any resistance from the teachers and guards. 2 streams of people, aggressive villagers and panicked students, clashed together, creating a scene of absolute, terrifying chaos. My dad, his face utterly cold and ripple-less, carried the compass and led the mob. The compass needle spun wildly before suddenly snapping to a dead halt at a corner of the schoolyard. The old man bent down, grabbed a handful of bone-dry dirt, shoved it into his mouth, chewed mechanically, then spat it out. Dig! Principal Duong stood outside the circle, the fat on his face trembling, his bloodshot eyes full of panic. You all get the hell out of here right now. But the moment Duong Ni's shovel struck the earth, for the first time, his knees gave out, his face turning an ashen grey. Hoang Mao shoved his phone into my hands and threw himself into digging like a madman. I held the lens steady, pointing it at the growing hole. The live viewers had surpassed 10,000. The soil here was hard, old earth, showing absolutely zero signs of having been dug up just 15 days ago. The comments started getting sarcastic, demanding to wait for the lightning to strike the scammer priest dead. But when the hole was about a meter deep, Duong Ni suddenly shrieked like he'd been stabbed with a knife. Beneath the soot-black blade of the shovel, a piece of pale white finger bone was exposed amidst the yellow dirt. Duong Ni let out a choking gasp and fainted dead away. The entire schoolyard exploded in sheer terror. The villagers threw themselves in, digging with their bare hands. Very quickly, a complete skeleton was hauled up from the ground. The livestream traffic skyrocketed to 50,000 viewers, but everyone fell dead silent. The skeleton was tall, the bones sturdy, clearly a full-grown adult. This was absolutely not the 9-year-old kid, Duong Tue Kai. Beneath this schoolyard, there wasn't just a missing persons case, but a horrifying murder that had been buried long ago. My dad stood there, his milky white eyes staring at the remains, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly with a hidden meaning. The comments on the live stream were jumping like crazy. The truth at the bottom of that dirt pit left people breathless. Adult male. Buried for a long time. Not Kai. Those keywords hammered like mallets straight into the fake peaceful facade of this village. The wail of police sirens echoed loudly, tearing through the death-scented air. From a provincial plated cruiser, a rugged, weather-beaten criminal detective stepped out. My dad stood there, his milky white eye retracting its ghostly glare, replacing it with a grave, profound nod. They whispered, and then my dad pointed his finger toward the newly excavated grave. Everything had been set up in advance. Duong Tien Thu, the name Hoang Mao, Blondie, was just a shell fueled by hatred, tremblingly turned off his phone on the cops' orders. He watched Principal Duong get dragged away in handcuffs, his bloodshot eyes filled with a painful, agonizing satisfaction. Only after the police sealed off the schoolyard did the truth come out, not all at once, but piece by piece, like rotten boards being pried off a coffin. The adult skeleton belonged to Triu Loi, a teacher, a brother figure to many village kids, and the fiancé of Miss Tiu Diep. Years ago, before he became Hong Mao to the whole village, Duong Tien Thu had been a sharp, quiet boy who spent more time hiding from his drunk biological father than studying. The only warm place in his life had been Duong Ni's coffin-wood-scented house, Teacher Triu's patched cotton jacket, and Miss Deep's praise. "You are the smartest kid." One night, Tien Thu climbed over the school wall to sleep near Teacher Triu's dorm. He saw Triu arguing with Principal Duong. He saw enough to understand that the principal was not the saint the village worshipped. He also saw where the body was hidden, the south corner of the schoolyard, the same corner that was later repaired for 3 nights. Tien Thu made the mistake that haunted him for years. He told Miss Deep. Miss Deep tried to seek justice, and soon after, she was murdered. From that day on, Tien Thu stopped being a promising student. He dyed his hair, fought, stole, live-streamed nonsense, and acted like a rotten punk so no one would look too closely at him. But he never left the village. He stayed beside the school like a stray dog beside a butcher's door, waiting for the day someone powerful enough, crazy enough, or dirty enough would help him drag the truth into daylight. That was why my dad had asked Auntie Xuan to find him. That was why the clay in the cauldron pointed south. It was not magic. It was testimony, soil, memory, and one furious boy who finally dared to dig. As for little Kai, he had never vanished on the bridge. The backpack and bicycle were bait, thrown there to lead everyone away from the school. Kai had been taken because Duangyi had kept him outside the village school for years, and because the principal's people needed a child whose disappearance could be blamed on the road. The provincial police had already received Auntie Xuan's ledger and Niem Thu's statement before the school gate fell. They had only needed one thing the local station had never managed to get: a public opening that the principal could not quietly close. Then the back door of a police car opened. A haggard woman stepped out, holding the hand of a child. My heart tightened. That child wasn't a corpse. It was Duong Tiu Kai. Duongyi staggered once, as if his bones had forgotten how to hold up a living man. Then Kai threw himself into his father's arms. The old coffin maker collapsed to his knees, clutching his son so tightly that the boy almost couldn't breathe. This time, his crying was no longer the howl of a desperate beast. It was the broken sound of a man crawling back from hell, with his last drop of blood still alive. My old man had won big this time. 50,000 yuan? No. He had used the dirtiest tricks he knew to collect a blood debt for the dead. Under the dimming twilight, the schoolyard was a mess of dirt, broken bricks, and police tape. Auntie Xuan stepped out of the crowd, the hem of her shirt frayed from days of running around. She had been the one to carry the torn ledger and Niem Thu's statement to Captain Truong of the provincial police. That was why the sirens had arrived so quickly. That was why my dad had dared to swear on lightning in front of half the village. Principal Duong, the man who once stood in that yard preaching morality, was dragged away in handcuffs. Behind the bright shell of the school, the police found records, hidden accounts, and names that made the adults around me go silent. There were many children involved. More than any of us wanted to count out loud. My dad stood beside the pit, his milky white eye already covered again by the old eye patch. He looked at Kai and Duongyi holding each other, the corner of his lips curling up slightly, half mocking, half relieved. Exactly 3 days after setting up the altar alive, you see the person. Dead, you see the corpse. He never broke a promise, whether as a scam artist or a reluctant hero. I nudged my elbow into his scrawny ribs and whispered, "Dad, do you want to get a wife?" The old man didn't answer, just rapped me hard on the head and muttered, "About to pocket 50 grand and you're still talking nonsense. Let's go, back to town. The wind is too strong here. It's making my eyes sting." A few days later, Teacher Triu's remains were finally laid to rest beside Miss Deep. That afternoon, the mountain wind blew fiercely through the cemetery. I stood from a distance, looking at my dad's scrawny back beside the 2 graves. He didn't dance around, didn't chant incantations. He just quietly poured wine, tore meat, and muttered stories that perhaps only the dead could understand. For the first time, I saw that back, which always tried to stand tall to fake the enlightened master look, suddenly hunch over, weighed down by something much older than this case. Auntie Xuan stood beside me, eyes red but sparkling with pride. It turned out my bogus shaman dad didn't just know how to scam money. He knew how to use the rotten tricks of the underworld to do one clean thing. He played the villain to rip the masks off the people acting in the name of education. "Let's go home, Dad," I yelled across the field. The old man stood up, dusted off his tattered Taoist robe, his milky white eye looking toward me, and grinned, that familiar thug-like smile. But this time, I saw it shining brighter than the fading afternoon sun. "Get over here, you little brat. Go back and get ready to carry my bags. Next gig, we gotta jack the price up to 100 grand. I ran toward him, telling myself, yeah, he's a fake, but he's the most badass fake shaman in the world.